Janice, I want to ask you this question. Why do organizations struggle so much to deliver on time?
If you think about what causes organizations to not deliver on time, you can get a bit of insight into that, which is that what we would sort of call risk as just a big bucket. Definitely anything in the flow of work that is disruptive, unexpected, um, and a lot of times it does get down to clarity, communication, coordination, that sort of thing. As I've mentioned, like with Kanban, we address some of those types of problems. The other side of this is the expectation. And when we talk about delivering on time, well, what was that deadline based on? Did we consider all the different aspects when estimating how long it would take to deliver? Did we consider, security and regulatory and all these other sorts of elements, or were we just thinking of the development? Were we thinking about an optimal scenario? I mean, if someone says, come to my house for dinner, and their house is 10 miles away, and are you thinking, well, okay, I'm going to hit every light is going to be green, and the roads are going to be in perfect condition, and my car is going to be in perfect condition. Oh, and it's a supercharged performance vehicle, and all of this. I mean, like, but people, we hear that and we think, well, of course we would not expect that. But often the estimates are based on that kind of thinking. So it makes a lot more sense to track the data and see what our actual performance is, regardless of the reason. And then from there, we can sort of say, okay, well, now we know where we are, and let's now try to reel that in and maybe make better performance if we're not satisfied with that. The other thing is that I think leadership cares more about predictability than they do about speed. Now, that may not always be true, but I think in most cases that is the more desirable thing. And workers often don't get that. They just think, faster, faster, faster. But actually, they would rather have something that they can point to the board, to the investors, to whoever, and say, here is when this is going to be available, and it will be true.
Yeah, one of the comments with that, most of the time I see things failing or not making the schedule is because the schedule was set first.
Yeah.
I have to have this, and this is when I have to have it. Not, I need this, when can I have it? Or when they have schedules that are shipping every 6 months, it's absolutely critical that you make this regulation, but I'm not going to let you work on it until here, and it's due here. And okay, this doesn't work. There's not enough time in the day. There's not enough resources. There's not enough. And it's the urgency that comes up that I think screws every schedule I've seen. The other thing is nobody counts for process. I mean, nobody in their schedules counts for all the process overhead that ends up in the process. And so
yeah, there's a belief that all work is equal and that it's all urgent. And that's just, it sounds ridiculous, but it's incredibly common. So one of the things, like with Kanban, one of the things that you can do is try to get into a concept of classes of service, of different, kind of what's your first class, what's your business class, what's your economy class, of your work. And then realize that you can make trade-offs. If something more urgent comes in, you can drop something else, but it doesn't mean that everything is equal.
How important is it for diversity in the technology industry?
Critical, important, impossible to live without it. So one of the things, and I talk about it anytime anybody will give me a chance to talk about it, I'll talk about it. Diversity gives us our innovation. One of the ways you cause innovation is by having different thought processes, people with different perspectives. And if everybody looks and acts the same, they don't have different perspectives. And so you lose out on all of that opportunity for diversity. And if you look at the statistics, if you look at the numbers, and I didn't pull them up before now, but they all show that diversity actually brings innovation. It brings companies to be more successful in the stock market, everything about it. And even simple things like diversity helps you make a better product because the people who are going to use your product are a diverse set. So if we represent the population, um, so it's not all about one thing, or we do need more women in IT, we do need more diversity in IT, but it's not that we need one group in particular. We just need a diverse set. We need a diverse set of people, so we get all those different thought processes and all those different backgrounds and all those different perspectives to get us to think about each other. The other thing is we have to listen to those. So, not just hire them and bring them in, but actually listen when somebody has an idea, and make sure that we're bouncing our ideas off each other and listening to the other comments. Because, you can come out with the best thing in the world by just having that, not argument, but argument, that discussion, that heated discussion about this is the best way, this is the best way. Well, in the end, I bet you most times you come up with a third way or whatever. Not the ideas that anyone came up with, but it's the combination of ideas that generate that much better thought. And when we don't include diversity, we leave out so much of the population. There's so many people available. When I go look at the statistics about how many open jobs there are in IT, I just cringe. We can't fill them all. Well, you can't tell me there isn't enough population out there. What's going on? I mean, what are we doing here? Why can't we get people? Are we looking for the right people? Are we looking for the diversity? And I know we have a problem in college. We aren't graduating enough. Well, why do you need a college degree?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great technical schools out there that can, like Galvanize is great. So I agree.
Or P-Tech. We have the program that's High School Plus. And so there are lots of opportunities. Let's open the spectrum. Let's open the spectrum to people coming back into the workforce. Let's open the spectrum and see what we can get. And then we have a more innovative company, and then we can do more effectively.
Yeah, I love that comment about that we have to listen to people that it's not just enough to have the representation. We actually have to involve them. I've been in the last year involved in an advisory role with it's a event, and they I know that I was brought in partly because they were under pressure to have more women involved. I'm an advisor, right? So I was giving advice. At least 2 occasions, my advice was completely disregarded. And then later they did take that advice, but not when it came from me. It was from when it came from somebody else. It was basically the same thing. And so if they had taken my advice, they could have, it would have been helpful to take action earlier. But this is what I see happening, is they kind of are checking the box of oh, we have a woman, or we have whatever it is. But then that isn't the end of the story. You have to actually involve diverse ideas and listen to other voices, even if it's someone who you're maybe not used to working with, or who has ideas that are not maybe as comfortable.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. We have to listen, we have to cooperate, we have to want to participate, or we're just, checkboxes are worthless. I checkbox hiring doesn't help. Thinking about just because you're diverse, but actually bringing that idea in and having communication. I know I've been on all male teams, and I've put up with it. And I've been in diverse teams, and in general, the diverse teams have done significantly better. One, they've been better to be in, they've been more fun. Now, maybe that's just me and my viewpoint. I'm sure that some other guys liked their all male teams, but really and truly, we got more done. We got more valuable work done because you could get that diverse thought. And that's what I think really matters in that. And just growing the community and getting people to participate and listen and hear them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had the same thing happen to me, Janice, in engineering school. So I think that happens to women and minorities more often than not, and then they lose interest in whatever it is, right? Whether it's engineering or technology or whatever. When they're not heard, then they just stop doing it, right? So, so I think it happens a lot.
Well, and I've had also the opposite experience where I've been a conference organizer and I've tried to bring women in as, not just because they're women, but because they had some interesting idea or whatever. And I said, hey, I'd like you to speak on this. And majority of time they said no, because they didn't feel confident enough.
Yeah.
And and I don't blame them. I mean, you spend your whole life having, having your ideas diminished, you get nervous about this. But, I've certainly dealt with a lot of men where they don't have a single thing put together and they're ready to get up there and speak, and it's just, it's frustrating. So I've looked into things like, well, could there be sort of a women only like support network or something like that to get women to get more comfortable in these situations.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
I think there's organizations out there for that. Yeah.
I think there are a number of organizations, but I'll say I'm the kind of person that's just going to shove them out there anyway. You can do this session. I mean, I'll be there. I'll sit there. I'll be there. So support you, but go. And we have to do that for some people. The somewhat of the problem is it's not just. It's usually women who have that problem, but it's not just. I mean, it's women, minorities, whatever. But it's also some very capable men have the same self-image, is what I'm going to call it, problem. They're second guessing themselves, and we just have to give an opportunity for everyone to speak and allow them to speak. I've been in more scenarios than I care to think about where you didn't necessarily hear the woman what they said. The room's talking, they're not going to listen. But if you can get some, and I work with some guys who repeat my idea, but give me credit, but getting others to repeat the idea and giving you credit, not just taking it, those kinds of things, and teaching others that are already senior leaders to follow that mold, you can help grow that diversity and getting people. That's another example of leadership, making sure you're bringing in everybody, recognizing their contributions.
So switching gears, Janice, what part of the organization causes the most trouble? And when I mean trouble, I mean like blocking the smooth delivery of work.
I mean, we referenced this a little bit earlier as far as leadership, but I'm actually not going to say leadership as much. I'm going to say upstream. That the work, wherever the work is coming in from, what happens particularly in Scrum, Scrum has such a team focus. And so what happens is work comes in. Now, I mean, ideally, you're going to have definition of ready and all this kind of stuff, but it's often will come in and it will be not well specified, or the situation changes, which may be from the same stakeholders that gave you the work. Guess who gets blamed when it doesn't get delivered? It's not that whoever provided the work request, it's the team that gets blamed for, so I really believe I've seen this again and again, that teams will be just tearing their hair out trying to figure out how can we be more predictable, how can we resolve all these problems. Turns out the issue was not in the team. So that's something that having that visibility into the entire value stream, it really helps.
At the time where we like to ask you to give some advice, free advice out there for our young women looking to get into careers in Agile. So I'm going to let Lauren take over, and go ahead, Lauren.
Thank you, Deborah. Okay, so for both of you, a question I receive all the time when being asked about Agile is what it's used for. So for all the college students out there, can you both explain how Agile is applied to any job and why it's used? Why is it so important to use it as well?
Okay, so why Agile? I always find this easiest to explain to people who ever did waterfall, because I did for 20 years. I did waterfall project management. And roughly how that works is you have a project spec, and it's very detailed document, big document. And the rule is that that has to be complete before it goes to the next stage. And then that stage has to be complete before it goes to the next stage. And what we would do, we would be doing development, and we would say, I have to change something. Don't tell, because you're not allowed to change it. You're supposed to be following the spec, but the world changes, situations change, the market changes, the customers change, the organization changes. Of course it does. And so that means that the way you're working, what you're doing, you need the ability to pivot in terms of what you're developing or the service you're providing. And so Agile is great because it gives you those pivot points and that flexibility and that communication, and it's not as heavily about just the specifying. So that's kind of the simplest way. It's kind of in the name, right? It's Agile, it's more flexible. And what was the other part of your question? It was
how can it be applied in any job?
Oh, right. Okay. So there are formal Agile systems, of course, but you could actually, in any context, you could apply an Agile mindset. So even if your organization or your department is not working in Agile officially, you could still try to, for any work that comes in, try to have an understanding, a basic understanding of it up front, and have frequent check-ins, even daily check-ins, to make sure you're still on track, and try as much as possible to keep from being interrupted during that time. I know that is hard. And then when you deliver, take the time to actually look back at your processes. Doing all of those things, even if you're not officially Agile, would give you a lot of the benefits of an Agile practice.
Now, when I think about Agile, I many times work with clients, say, I'm not talking big A Agile, I'm talking little a Agile, just to get them out of the mindset of the Agile official process, because that scares them to death. I work with many clients who are, legacy waterfall. That's the only thing they've ever known. That's the way they've always worked. And it's just too scary when you think about Agile. And so we focus on the agility, we focus on the visibility, the transparency, making sure we understand, making sure we have fast feedback, and getting that feedback and pivot, making sure we're learning from each iteration, trying to break down the work into smaller things. And there are some things it's hard to do that with. I'm going to pick on firmware. it's a little harder in firmware to be as agile, though they can do a lot with learning and experimenting. But when you build a chip, yeah, you kind of build a chip.
Yeah.
So there's a little difference. But hardware aside, almost anything else, and even with hardware, there's ways of doing simulations, etc. But the best way to think about it is, I'm going to try something small, I'm going to learn from it, I'm going to get that fast feedback and figure out what to do. And we can do that in just about any work that's being done that's not pure manufacturing, because that's a little harder because you're just repeating a whole bunch of processes. But anything that you're using knowledge work for, building requirements, I always wish that the requirements portion of the work was actually done in a more agile, let's get feedback whether or not our requirements actually made sense first process, the whole thing. And we run lots of projects in not formal agile, but agile. They're very agile in the sense of, I'm going to have it well documented in the sense of what is it I want to do, and get that feedback very quickly, and then pivot, and then figure out what the right thing is. What should I really be doing? And focus that way.
Yeah, I think feedback and pivot are kind of the the big points that come up with Agile.
Thank you, guys. So I guess, how can students use these agile techniques for school projects? This can be for college or high school.
I mean, I recently did a presentation on personal Kanban, and I covered several college student examples where they were doing everything from like a single project to all the way through to their ongoing flow of work. You know, a lot of college students are able to make their work visible, which is a very important thing. Rosalind mentioned manufacturing. You know, the thing about manufacturing is you can see the inventory, right? It's physical. But in knowledge work, which includes things like education, legal, sales and marketing, writing books, whatever, IT, all of these, it's not visible. So this is why we put things on sticky notes or whatever, because it suddenly you can see how much work there is, and you can manipulate it and manage your work physically or digitally at least. Um, and that's something that I would certainly recommend to college students. There are lots of little software packages out there for doing this sort of thing, for managing your work that way. And that's a great place to start. The other thing, you know, coming from Lean, is limit how much work you have in progress. If you start tons and tons of things, it is scientifically proven that it may feel like you're getting more done, and multitasking may feel like a wonderful skill, but actually in the end you're going to get less done doing that. It's better to focus and finish, and just try it and you'll see how that works. It takes a little bit of discipline, but it's a great way to apply it to your own projects. And it reminds me, I need to bother my daughter who's in college about this and remind her.
So personal Kanban, or personal Trello boards, or personal whatever you want to do. I know people who work well that way, and that is one thing that, as a college student or a student, having the to-do lists, having the assignments, having those things, tracking it that way is one good thing. The other thing that I always say is, at least I hope, everyone in college and in high school is having team projects. Please don't say everything's independent. Please learn to play with others. What the skill you learn most important in school is learning how to work with others, learning how to collaborate, learning how to do projects with other people that have different skills. And well, you know, any of those school projects, why not? Why not use Kanban? Why not use a process? Show the work, make it visible, make it clear who's doing what, so you don't run into those problems that you have in college projects. I thought you were doing that. I thought, yeah, make it clear. I know with my son, he was in first robotics, and when he was in high school, and now he's off in college, but when he was in first, we set up planning, work items and planning and source code management. And they did all their work in a way that we could see it. We knew what was going on. You could track it, because that made it easier. You really knew who was doing what. You knew what had to get done when. And with robotics, it's a project. You've got events you've got to be ready for. You've got things to do. And some of it is software, some of it's hardware, some of it's presentation, some of it's documentation. All of that was managed as part of the project. So, all of those kinds of projects or clubs or any of those things can be managed that way.
Yeah, I think that's very important. And it's funny that you see, because I'm a college student, I do see that, Agile is lack thereof when it's taught in classes, or it's just not taught in the way that, it should be. And so I think it's really important, and that's why I told all the people in my course that I'm taking that it's about Agile. I was like, come listen to this podcast. You guys need to learn about this. These are the experts, and so come learn. So thank you guys very much for the feedback. I know that the college students and even the high school students that are listening really appreciate it. So thank you.
So I can't believe the hour is almost up. Wow, you guys, this was a really good conversation. Then we need to start winding down. So I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. It was a really, really good show.
Well, thanks so much. It was fun.
Thank you. It's been great.
One last thing before you two go. Rosalind, can you let our audience know how people can reach you? Because I bet you they'll have many questions to ask.
So I'm accessible at Rosalind Rad on Twitter or Rosalind Radcliffe in LinkedIn. I use Facebook for personal stuff. So those are the easiest ways. My email is also accessible to the world, rradclif@us.ibm.com. And I answer anybody. And the other thing I do is I enjoy helping students, talking to students, mentoring others. So if people want to learn about careers in IT, and I'm happy to talk. So my calendar is full. So to some extent, I'm happy to talk at strange times usually.
And Janice, you as well.
Yeah. So I'm very reachable on LinkedIn for Janice Linden-Reed. And also I can be emailed at Janice, Janice, @readyoption.com.
Perfect.
And they can go to you have a website, readyoption.com?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the link I provided to you though was actually a different link, but yes.
We have it.
We'll do that too.
So we'll have show notes and we'll have all the links and the way to reach you guys. And thank you so much for providing that, because I know that our audience will have questions, and I may get in touch with you both as well, because part of what we do here is to help college students. So now that you've volunteered, I may be bothering you. So just a reminder to our listeners that although this show is live, we do record them and release them as a podcast. So please subscribe to the Lurnist Show on Apple iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, or your platform of choice. You can find the links to the show on our website, thelurnist.com. That is the LURNIST.com.
And of course, thank you to our sponsor, Learn Agile. Visit learnagile.com to learn about what we can do for your career in Agile.
And so that's it for now. Thanks for listening. We will be back in about a month at 11 a.m. Arizona time, which I believe will be Mountain Standard Time at that time. And thanks again to our special guests today. We really, really enjoyed having you both on the show.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.